All right. So what I was just saying is this getting very abstract. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and then this is all gouache.
Yeah.
Well, it's pretty, it shouldn't be that hard to fix in gouache. I mean, it just depends on how much knowledge you have of it. But like you have the initial sort of shapes here. This is getting pretty lost. So number one, I'd also look at, and again, of course you can stylize it, but I'd probably add some, these things are kind of complicated looking. They have these kind of things and ropes and this and stuff up here. And there'd be more probably here,
Hmm.
and then what's here, there'd probably be a deck thing. And it's not that it's about accuracy. It's about that I got to give the viewer enough kind of styling, right?
Hmm.
And then there'd probably be something here. Sometimes they have another boat right here that's sitting there. They got nets. They got all this stuff. I'd also maybe come in here and break up the hull a little bit.
It My biggest problem is actually trying to make the waves representational of America because before I added the red, it looked fine.
So you
Not
want to
good,
add
but
those
like,
colors in there?
huh?
You want to add those colors into the wave?
Yeah, like I want it to be more representation of America, which means like usually like black, white, and red. And I think I got like out of hand,
Well,
got kind of
and that's
bad.
also a design issue. It's like, how's that going to work? Is it just sort of the wave is made up of those colors? Is it sort of a flag idea? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I I thought about putting like like debris in the water, but I think I'm just not gonna be able to pull it off. So
I
I
wouldn't add more stuff in here. You got a lot going on visually.
yeah.
I mean, if I was going to do anything like that, then I'd probably, and it would be mostly just to try and pull in um, something, make sure people know this is, what the scene is. And I probably wouldn't do this, but if I was, it'd probably be like a buoy or something right here, right in the foreground, sort of drifting around in the water also. Does that make sense?
Wait,
And then we give
why?
you a foreground element and all that, huh?
Oh, okay.
I'm not saying do that, but if I was going to do anything, then if I throw debris in the water, I'm confusing the viewer more. If
Yeah.
I put an object in the water that everybody relates it to, fishing, ports, all that kind of stuff, then it's starting to, help the viewer from little clues. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Well, my point was that I was gonna put like debris in there to signify that like America swallowed it up. It's like my biggest problem right now is how to make like the waves representation of America, and that's like not going very well.
Well, that's a design thing. I would have had that all worked out before I ever started painting, right?
I thought it was gonna be the colors.
Well, you could do that, but it's like then you got to go, how am I breaking that up? Is it the surface of the wave where I get a big clean statement? Um, is it going to be the dips in between the waves where you get, or is it the wave uh has, I don't know, red in it, and then it's poking through the tops of the wave where it goes transparent, and as it drops down and goes darker, then I go into a blue, and then my foam is my white, so I got red, white, and blue.
Right,
You know what I mean?
right. That was
But
my
go ahead.
original idea, but then I don't think it's working.
Well, I think
I
because it's because like this up here is now starting to sort of get random mark making up here,
Mhm.
like these marks here, where it's really, and again, this is a dance between uh whatever you call it, uh uh representational and completely designed. right? Because you're
Yeah.
not just going for totally design, but you know, this is going to have foam or whatever on the front end leading edge of it. Oh, hang on. Oops. So I'd have to start getting, you know, because what do you got to do really when you're doing something like this is you have to start organizing all the shapes and the whatever you call it, the
Oh,
the shapes and the I'm going to go really white here, which I don't normally do. I wouldn't go that white, but I'm just doing it to make my point. And I'm also probably going to push it in, you know, to the background. And I'd start building my value maybe. So I got to start defining where the front of the wave is. You know, is my red idea going to be getting caught here in this wave or in this surface?
that's kind of where I was going.
You could still do that. But what's happening, you got to structurally organize it first. Like this is going to be, this whole wave face is going to, you know, define this. And then you can go a little crazier around once you have a good solid definition of that wave. I'd argue that down here where the boat is, I could probably salvage that because this feels like a wave coming up. There's a little bit of abstraction there that you could still leave in there, which isn't bad. I like abstraction, but you got to get like up here, it's getting very abstract, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would probably try and then on top of that, I'm going, okay, so is it a sunset back there? Is it, you know, there's so many things going on. I'm not sure what's the point of view. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You know, is
Maybe
there a
I.
sky back here? But if whatever's back here in the sky, I can, you know, I can use that to carve back into my wave shape to start to organize all this information, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's your first thing is you got to get the information organized. It's just like when you're doing a any kind of painting, you're going in and getting those big shapes nailed down. They're very simple. And then you start sort of loosening up and painting into it and going to smaller shapes. But you've got that overall lockdown shape thing done, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I draw the shapes, but then like when I started painting, I kind of lost them. So I might draw them back in with like blue or brown again.
Yeah, I would
I
just
don't
go in
want
and
to
get a
know.
neutral. I would use a neutral, like a burnt sienna or something. Just go in and,
Mm,
but now really think big shapes, right? So if you've got, the first thing I would do is organize this main image, this wave,
mm-hmm.
really simply. Then I go, well, here's my boat. I'd make sure that it's, you know, it's got a presence and that there's enough, you know, cool stuff on it and tilt it like you did, which is cool. You know, and then I've got this other wave face here, whatever it is. And I'm just going to start there, you know, and then what's back here, you know, how does that all work? This wave face would probably come over and whatever's back here. But if I just break it down into this really simple shape first, and then I go, okay, it's going to do this, you know, it's doing this kind of thing. You know, I don't care about breaking up this edge because I'm going to do that with paint. What I'm worried about now is structure and simplicity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to paint this, you know, I'm going to block these little areas in like this area, this area, this area, and then the boat, you know, whatever's back here. And really handle them all like really simple planes and things like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But you don't want to go crazy with your brushwork too fast, you know. You can once you get like really used to it, but you're still going to have to sort of get everything sort of placed to make sure the values are working, make sure everything's separating. That's like your biggest
Values.
thing.
Oh, the values.
Well, values, if the values don't work, nothing works.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of hard to control right now, but
But what I'm saying is from now on,
yeah,
go at it a little more methodically.
yeah,
Okay. And one of the things I probably said this in here, maybe not in this class because it's a different class. um, you've got to have a methodology. Okay. Now that doesn't mean there's not room for improvisation within your methodology, but you've got to have a methodology to be consistent, right? Yeah.
yeah.
Because I just had a guy today. We had a final, and I don't even understand this. He has a very methodical approach. He's really good, but his approach is very methodical, and he takes a long time on it. And then today's the final, and I open it up and I go, "Where's the image?" And he goes, "Oh, it's all right there." And there's all these drawings that haven't even been colored yet. It's just a bunch. It's just like the basic drawings. And I go, "Well, where's the image?" He goes, "Oh, it's all right there." And I go, "Can you imagine if I was an art director and hired you and I said, where's my image that was due today?" And you said, "Oh, it's all right there." And it's just a bunch of drawings that aren't even, there's nothing put together. Like that was a weird answer to me. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
That's a really weird answer to me because I go, I don't understand what you're talking about. Translation, you missed the deadline, dude. And the reason you missed the deadline is I don't have a problem with, I like actually that he has a very methodical, it's just the way his brain works, which is kind of cool, but it's like, that's fine if you want to go down that path. You better have a fast way of doing it because nobody's going to tolerate it. Does that make sense?
mm-hmm.
And the reason I'm bringing that up is that he has a very methodical approach, and that's what I'm talking about, is having a good solid methodology. But it's such an involved methodology, he's missing deadlines, right?
Yeah.
So, but what you always want to do, and then did you do comps, like little comps?
Well, I did like a few on my computer, and those were like a lot lighter than like what I actually ended up doing.
Okay, here's the other problem, in my opinion. When you're this early in your process of learning and you're doing a traditional piece and then you're going to the computer, when you go to the paint, you have no idea what you mixed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, because you're just picking colors. Oh, that looks good. I'll just make it a little, I'll put more black in it. That's what I always see. I'll put more white in it. I'll put more black in it. You know, it's one of the reasons I
Mhm.
like the mixer brush. I can actually mix colors more instead of just picking them, right? But I also know I'm going to use a cooler red for that. And then I'm going to push it into here and all that. And that all comes from understanding color, right? Um, so there's a danger in there that it's not going apples to apples. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, but also I used to be a lot better at painting before I like switched to digital and try to like do that. Uh,
Well, I think you have to always maintain a balance of the two.
yeah.
You just always do, right? I was doing a demo this morning in Photoshop, and it's like, and pretty much every demo I do in there, it all comes out of paint knowledge. Okay, you can boom throw a landscape together in 5 minutes because I have paint knowledge, and then all those digital tools allow me to do it really fast, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not using formula. Okay, I'm not just using formula. I mean, I'm using methodology and all that stuff, but I'm not going, oh, Scott Robertson says do this and then flip it, and then put it together and then put a line down the center and then use this filter and do that and do that. Like that's zero knowledge. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's not, there's nothing wrong with Scott Robertson doing that. But when he's teaching that stuff and nobody understands any of the foundational understanding underneath it, it's nothing but a stupid trick, right? And then what are you going to do? You can put that in your portfolio and somebody's going to hire you and then they give you some other task to do, which they're going to. And you go, I know how to do that. I don't really know how to draw or paint or anything, right? You can still break this down in the one you have.
I'll give it a shot, and if I seriously can't get it to work, I might like do oil over it.
Okay. I don't know what the oil over it accomplishes. I don't really get that. What does that accomplish?
It I don't know, like sometimes I feel like oil is like a little easier to control than like wash. And I have like a little bit more experience in it than
Okay. It might
this.
be an experience thing. The thing I don't understand about that logic is that it's like, okay, so now you're going to go over it opaquely with oil. I can go over it opaquely with gouache. And now you're going with an oil medium over water, over a watercolor medium, and whatever. If you get that to work, at the end of the day, if you were doing a real job, the end of the day, they would, you'd photograph that, scan it, whatever. and then that'd be end of it, you know? My problem with that is that it's not going to be archivally sound. Now, some people don't care about that, and that's fine. But, you know, if somebody goes, hey, I want to buy that piece, I want to give you $5,000 for that piece, what are you going to sell them a piece that's just going to deteriorate like really fast? You know what I mean?
Oh,
Now, if that's
I
not an
really,
issue, if that's not an issue for it, you know, probably doesn't matter.
I don't know that if it deteriorates, because you can't use gouache over oil, but you can use oil over gouache. That's how I learned it.
No, you can't. No, you cannot.
Oh,
Who told you that?
because like oil doesn't ever like really dry. That's what I was told, and then like
Who told
you
you all
know
this? Who
the
was it?
internet.
Oh, the internet. Well, there you go. Well, everything on the internet must be accurate, right?
I can't find the painting that I did it on, but
No, I'm
so
not
far,
saying I'm not saying you can't do it. What I'm saying is it's not structurally sound. Now you could go in under oil with acrylic, and that's totally sound. Okay. If you go acrylic over oil, not sound again. The reason is oil has to breathe. And if you start choking it with something else, it doesn't breathe. Okay. And then if you've got this water medium underneath oil, it just doesn't like that. Okay. And no, what they probably meant to say was it's okay to go oil over acrylic, because it is. Okay. So if you wanted to start something like this out with an underpainting that goes quicker, acrylic, you could totally do it with acrylic. Does that make sense?
yeah,
I forget what else I was going to say. Okay. Does that all that make sense?
yeah.
Okay. So you're just going to take a stab at it and try and kind of, I mean, I think there's some things in here that I wouldn't mind keeping. Like, I like this, you know, there's some things in here I like this is kind of interesting. I know this is a wave, but you got to clearly define it, right? And then even
Yeah.
this stuff back here could go pretty abstract as long as this stuff in the foreground I'm understanding, right?
Mm-hmm.
I like abstract brushwork and all that kind of stuff, but it has to work, right?
Mm.
And there's I could probably go in here for an hour or so and probably redefine the waves and things, and then it would probably start to work. Right? I think it's really about defining this surface of this wave and then getting this a little more put together. You know, maybe this isn't here because this is starting to come up and I'm going, well, you know, it could be like another wave crashing over the back of it that way. That kind of makes sense. But now I got to get that flow of water coming this way, this flow of water going up that way, and then this one going this way. Because to a certain extent, if this isn't about reality, we just got to believe it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, so we talked a little bit
So
about the one that was sort of like that, right?
yeah, I did it digitally first, and then I tried that. But the gouache ones were before I
Here's another
did
thing
the
with the
digital
digital
ones I sent
thing.
you.
Here's the other thing with the digital thing. Sometimes if you want to just go in and big picture it, I don't think that's a terrible thing to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's
Just to
kind of what
go,
I did
her
because I
jacket's going
had
to be
no
red.
idea.
This back here is going to
Yeah.
be blue. This is going to be purple. This is going to be this. It's going to be that. I'm not really worried about
Right.
what am I mixing temp. I'm just going, does this kind of combination of colors work? I think it's great for that, but I'd still go, and it looks like you did. I'd still go and do my traditional comps if I'm going to a traditional
Yeah.
meeting. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I started with the gouache ones on the right, and then I was like struggling with color, so I went digital, and then I went back to traditional,
Which
but I
one's
did
digital?
watercolor.
Which ones are digital? This one?
All of these are traditional. The
Oh,
ones
okay. I
I
was going to say
sent
they
you in
look
the
traditional.
email. Yeah, the ones I sent you in the email were digital.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. If you're just big picturing it, whatever, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I do that. I just go, what if I have a blue sunset back there and the sky is yellow and this is that and this is that and this is that, and then I go, okay, that kind of works, and then I jump right over to my traditional thing. That's the other value also, and most people do this anyway, of having the same palette across all your different mediums, right?
Yeah.
Because if I could go, well, I'm going to do this in whatever, but I might just do the comp in watercolor or something, or gouache if I was going to do oil or something, because I'm using all the same colors and all the different mediums I'm working. The only one that switches a little bit is gouache a little, because gouache has a different naming convention than most paint, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like they have spectrum red. I've never seen spectrum red in any other color. They have like, they just have certain colors that you don't see them anywhere else.
Yeah, I have a hard time with gouache with like, because watercolor I'm very comfortable with the palette I have and like mixing colors, but gouache I'm not.
Well,
So
just try and just match up your palette where they're the same.
yeah.
And again, like I'll use in oil, I'll use Grumbacher red because it's super neutral. It's super neutral. Then I go to Perol or something in acrylic, and then in watercolor, I think I use. I can't remember what I use in water. I might use Perol. I can't remember. And then I'll use
That's
alizarin
what I
crimson
use,
as
yeah.
my cool. And then when I go to gouache, then I find a more neutral red in there because they don't have a Perol, I don't think, right? Or maybe I go to another manufacturer like Holbein because I usually use Winsor Newton, and maybe Holbein has that color, right? And then I'll
Yeah.
just go, screw it, I'll buy Holbein. But I'm going to make sure I'm buying quality paint, right?
Mhm. Yeah, but I decided to go with watercolor instead because I
That's fine.
wanted to get a smooth gradient for like the sky, and I don't know how to do that in gouache. So yeah.
Well, the nice thing about, and I would just do it in watercolor, who cares?
Yeah.
I mean, gouache is, especially if it has a little bit of thickness to it, you can endlessly blend it and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, personally, I mean, it's not that it's bad, or, I mean, I know this is jumping way out into something different, but if I was going like, oh, I want, and because I used to do this with all, acrylic gouache, whatever, I might go, oh, I want that sky to be a big gradient. I come in with an airbrush and I'd airbrush just the sky, right?
Oh,
And then
that'd be nice.
yeah, and then I start painting back over it. I'm gonna bring my airbrush over to the campus,
Ooh.
and my whole rig, and then I'm gonna in my traditional media class, I'm at least gonna demo it. I'm not gonna give them a project in it, but I'll demo it. But then I could get a perfect gradation in the sky, and then I just go and start painting normal. Like that's the only part I use it for. Maybe is that.
Yeah.
And then because people, and then when you paint normal brush into it, then when everybody sees it, they're like, "How the hell did you get the sky like that?" And it's like I airbrushed it, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I started painting the actual one, and getting the sky gradient was so hard. But I
Well,
mean, I
okay,
think it
with
turned out okay.
watercolor or with gouache,
Watercolor.
either or. You want to, when you're doing a gradient, you want to get that when you're bringing that down nice and smooth. You want to make sure that that leading edge keeps moving.
Yeah, right.
Okay, because once that leading edge stops moving, you got a line and it breaks it. Okay? You got to keep that. And what happens is people don't sort of plan for that. And you usually don't want it super soupy because then that's going to dilute it and it's going to get lighter and darker patches. And then you're just bringing it straight down, until it sort of runs out on itself. So you want to kind of think about how much paint you put on there and then make sure that leading edge stays moving, right? And then it'll sort of fall off on its own. And then you should get a pretty smooth gradation. Did I put up the watercolor washes video in here? I didn't. I'll put that up.
I do have the portion I did of the real painting too, if you want to look at it. But yeah,
which one here are you leaning towards?
The one on the top in the middle, because that's what I started doing there.
Oh, I see it. Okay. Now, another thing, if you're going to go from here to here, what's this, like a blue?
Yeah, it just doesn't show very well on the picture.
Yeah, okay. So you also, again, you're going to want to premix your orange or whatever. And then, that way when you get to that leading edge, you're like, boom, right into that next part of the gradation, right?
Yeah.
And also, what was I just going to say? Also, and I'm not sure because I'm not looking at the original, if it's going from orange and then down to blue, I might go orange, a little purple, and then into blue. So I'm sort of rolling through the spectrum a little bit.
Yeah, just to have like a transition.
Orange, blue.
Yeah.
Like if you look at the sky, a lot of times when you get these hot sunsets, you'll get a lot of violet in there. And then up as it goes higher, it gets into a deeper blue usually, I mean, it can do a whole lot of things. But think about that spectrum whenever you're doing that. If you're having a jump in color where you're going from this to this, you're going, man, that's just a real big, boom transition real fast. look and see if there's a transitional spectrum color in there. Right?
Right. Yeah.
And then sometimes the sky will do things like parts of it will just go sort of greenish, and you're like, okay, that's weird. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then what I do, and I probably said this in here, what I try to do is I like to look at it and try and figure it out and go, why is it doing that? You know, oh, there's a lot of yellow down here, and there's this and there's that. And then I might get a halfway handle around it, then I'll go look it up and go, why does this guy do this? You know, I want to know, because then I have it in my toolbox, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so which one was it? This one?
Yeah.
Okay.
So do you like the colors of the rest of that, like the ones that I haven't put in the actual painting yet?
Well, some of these are interesting. Like this is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is interesting. I don't think I'd go that. I mean, unless you're going for a really unnatural thing, which you kind of are here because it's so bluish. That's a real saturated red, right?
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
it's also going darker here and then lighter up here. I'd flip that, and towards the horizon, it's always lighter, right?
Oh, well, the particular picture I was looking at, it was like the most saturated near the horizon, so that's what I was basing
It
on.
could, but I also would argue I don't know what's going on in that picture,
Yeah.
because to be honest, photography just lies all over the place.
Mm.
And it also depends on who took that picture, especially nowadays. This matters even more. Who took that picture? Did they take it into Photoshop and dick around with it? You know what I mean? Did they,
Yeah.
I don't know. But all a photo to me is stuff for me to interpret. So I never look at it and go, hey, the picture was this. I don't care what it is in the picture. I'll change it. You know what I mean? All it's doing is giving me it's just giving me some information. I always call it a insurance policy, right? Like I can go in there and oh, there's some shapes back there kind of interesting. I might pull a few of those, whatever it is, right? Because I think the one you showed me before was a little more orangey sunset, right?
Yeah.
Now that doesn't matter here because we're not doing a documentary here. So if you can interpret that and it looks interesting, go for it, right? I think this one's interesting. I mean, I think a lot of these are interesting. I think this is really interesting. Okay, but you're going here, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
I out of the 3 I sent you, that wasn't my favorite one, but then I just went with it because I was like, the people I asked were saying go with that one. So
Who
now
are the
I'm
people?
like the class, and I asked you too. So
Okay.
like pretty much, yeah. But do you think I should still go for that one, or should I shift gears and try something else instead?
I think
because I mean, then
here's
I
what I'd
probably
say. There's something interesting about these ones where you go way into like sort of its own universe kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I also don't feel like it doesn't feel like you're doing that just to do it. It feels like an exploration, which is kind of interesting. Did they come get these people at night?
Yeah, they like had to leave by midnight, which was what this was inspired by. So
I like this one too. And I like something about this one.
yeah, I did want to go like more experimental with the colors.
That's fine.
And then I settled for the one that was more normal colored. And then now I'm like kind of I don't know.
If I put a little orange down here, that also helps it transition. Does that make sense?
Yeah. For
So
sure.
it might not be that you need any violet up here. You might just need to put a little hot down here. And that sort of rolls it a little bit too, right?
Right.
So maybe it's just that. Just add and that you could just add with a little touch of gouache because it's opaque. Right?
Mm-hmm.
If you want to do that. But it seems to be accomplishing the same kind of idea. And let's see if we go. Oops, I screwed up. Let's go here. Let's see what happens if we go. Yeah, you can, I just kind of make sure these things transition nicely. And some of it's probably going to go a little purpley on you anyway, because you're going blue warm into, or you're going red into blue anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So it might, that little overlap probably will give you that anyway. I don't have a problem with I don't have a problem with either one of them. It's just, it's really up to you if you want to go with this more. I think there's something interesting about this one.
Yeah.
And that's up to you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the one you're working on is bad or anything. It's just, you've given me a lot of options here. And I think some of them, there's 2 or 3 that are pretty nice options. Right.
Yeah.
And there's
it's
something
hard to choose.
Huh?
It's hard to choose.
That's a good problem to have.
Yeah, I guess.
What would you rather be struggling for an idea?
No.
Right. It's better to have.
I felt like I was struggling when I was making these, but
everything I've ever done that requires creative thinking, I feel like I've struggled with. You know what I mean?
yes.
They're presenting you with the problem, usually that it's a new problem. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So you got to solve it. It's not easy, man. And that's my point partially with this whole thing. Again, I know I'm broken record on this, but I just feel like there's too much easy. Okay, that's a good solution. It's like, it's not a good solution. You know what I mean? And I think struggling for the solution and then, finding them, and then you sort of start building your way of working and all that sort of thing. That's to me what's valuable. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Not somebody going, oh, that's fine. It's like, it's not fine. You're setting up, in certain classes, it just is what it is. But sometimes you're setting up something that's not very challenging for me. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then you're not pushing me, let's say. I had a lot of teachers that would, I had a teacher one time, and it was an editorial class. And I came in and showed him my stuff, because we're having like personal crits, and he opens up I had this stuff in like a little thing. I can't remember what it was. And he opens up and he goes, really? You know what I mean? He goes, this is your solution? And he shut it. He goes, I'm not looking at this, dude. It's just, go rework it. This is terrible. He just told me, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was good for me, because I wasn't reaching hard enough for the solution, and he was going, I don't like the drawing either. He goes, are you going to execute it like this? Is this going to be your execution? I don't like this. Like that drawing's not strong. He just tore the whole thing apart, and it was good. Well, it was good though. You know what I mean? Because at first you have that reaction where you go, yeah, screw you, man. Like I didn't say that, but I'm just thinking in my head. And then I've had this happening a lot. And then I'm all hot, I'm all pissed off. And at first I think he's full of crap and he's not right. And then I cool off, and whatever it is, an hour later or something, I go, oh, man, he's totally right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he was actually, I didn't like him that much as a teacher, but I really respected his work.
I'm like, we're supposed to be the ones.
Okay, so here's a rubble pile, yeah?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
See how it's a little irregular. It's not such a clean edged pile, right?
Mm-hmm.
There, and here's the trick, at least in my opinion, when you do rubble, I love drawing piles of stuff. Okay, this is actually a drawing for a painting. Okay.
Okay.
Which I need to actually get done. But if you notice, I'm giving you a few distinguishable items. There's like an old desk or something here, shopping cart, milk jug, door, desk, dumpster, right? But then when you get up in here, the rest of it's totally abstract.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's sort of the trick to it, because when you're doing a pile of something, a lot of it is just sort of texture and board sticking out, and then something, and then a tire, and then, whatever, right?
Right.
So there's the tire. But the main thing is there's a nice little kind of rhythm to this. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I admit, like, I didn't really know how to do that, but like seeing it helps.
I can find, I had this on, I think I have this on Instagram probably. I'll find it and I'll link it.
Okay.
Because I drew this actually in a bar.
Oh, nice.
I say this all the time, and I think the students probably always think I'm an alcoholic. And that's just not it. My girlfriend owns a restaurant with a saloon, so I sit in there all the time and I just draw. And I was just drawing sort of stuff out of my head for like painting ideas and stuff like that.
I think that's cool.
Yeah. Anyway, so And then what I like about these is I printed this out. I wet mounted it down. It's about that big on a piece of illustration board. I'm going to do my color comp on that. And then I'll freehand the drawing again onto the bigger canvas, because this will go onto a big, probably 3 by 3 foot canvas, right?
Mhm.
In oil, right? But I'll work everything out here.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a nice little rhythm that kind of starts here and sort of spills down this way. It's not a clean, closed edged pile. There's a little bit of stuff, right?
Right.
And then some of it's just textural. No, does that make sense?
Yes.
And then if you take this idea, let's see if we can do this. Let's take, and just for time's sake, I'll just do this.
Mhm.
See how that makes a little more of a statement, because it's not such a little thing, and then this over here and this over here, they're a little more integrated.
Yeah.
And obviously,
Yeah, it looks better.
I wouldn't have it see-through, obviously. You know, and you'd have to get the scale correct.
Right.
Like I feel like this, because you don't want the arm to be tiny. And then where does it break the edge? You know, blah, 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 right?
Mm-hmm.
You got to make sure this doesn't get lost, right?
Yes.
And also I might go, because there's a flame on here, sort of what we talked about before. Then I go, okay, what's this lighting going to be? And let's just go, because I can start with anything here, obviously. And this, obviously, this hand, and this wouldn't be see-through, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then I go, okay, maybe it lights up down here. And maybe down here. And maybe right here. Now, this is what I'm talking about, what the computer can be handy for. I'm not going to mix my colors here, but I might just sort of get an overall scheme going. Right? An evil scheme.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's kind of interesting, right?
Yes.
And then I can go, because at this point, I just want to see if this will even work.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, this here should be a little more orange. And then I go, okay, if I want to get a little more impact in here, maybe I go, and I just go, okay, there's my basic idea.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And if I was, how are you going to do this?
I was thinking originally I was thinking just inking it and I wanted it black and white, but I think I like the color better.
If I was going to paint this, I'd probably paint the board I'd probably wash most of the board in this bluish thing as my basing starting point,
Yeah.
which I don't normally do, but I probably would with this. I usually use a warm color, but in this I might use a cool one because there's something really interesting about that, all that cool in there. And then that pop of the horizons lightened up down there and then popping all this other stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I really like that.
Because that'll tie it all together.
Hmm.
You know, maybe it's just like that. Maybe it's not so screaming because that way this can scream the
Yes.
flame. Yeah.
Yes.
And then I go, okay, now I got that going. How far do I want to go? Oops, where's my flame? There it is. Then I can go up here and get my embers going up. Right?
Hmm.
And then, you know, maybe this background is just more neutral even, but I'm liking the little bit of saturation, but let's see.
I was gonna ask, should I have a defined background or should I just kind of leave it to the colors?
Well, what the way I'm working it is like, if you're going to give me this torch, I want to light that torch up
Yeah.
because that's important.
Hmm.
It's got to be, and I might even do it something like this, where I do a very limited thing here and let this light up and this light up and maybe a little something here, light hitting this hand a little bit, and I'm out.
Okay.
I mean, you know what I mean? There's all these stylistic choices. What tends to happen, and another reason why I want to do this class is I want to get people out of going, okay, now I set up, now I've got to render it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, no, there's all these different ways of handling this. I might go in and do a wash over my drawing like this, because I do this all the time as a starting point. Then I might hit a few things, but I also don't want that pile of stuff in the background to overwhelm my torch.
Yeah.
So maybe that just becomes a reduced idea. And maybe this also, maybe it's all about this, where you come in here and you grab sort of an ochre. See if I can find one. See what that looks like. And I don't know what color that thing is for real. I always assume it's gold, but I have no idea. You know, maybe I put a little bit of sparkle on that, you know.
Yeah.
You know, make it gold or whatever color it is. I don't even know what color. It tells you how American I am, right?
I wasn't sure what color I would make it either.
You know, and most of my colors is more concentrated there, right?
Yeah.
You know, you gotta, you know, what I want you guys to do is start finding little, you know, and then maybe there's a little bit of reflected light on this hand, maybe. Just to light it up a little. You know, it probably needs a little more of that orange in there. And I just go, okay, you know, I don't like that yet, but I could probably make that work, right? Or maybe
Yeah.
the hand doesn't get any reflected light. It's all about that torch about to go into that pile. And I also like that that also implies, you know, it hasn't been torched yet. It's about to, right?
Right.
So it might be a limited color thing, relying somewhat on it. And you can always do the under drawing in one color and paint. I mean, there's just so many ways to do it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And if you look at a guy like Victor Uwaz, he's doing very loose drawings and then he splashes watercolor all over them, right?
Yeah.
Does that help?
It does. Thank you so much.
Hang on a minute. Boom, done. See, this is too uniform, right?
Yeah.
You just need some texture in between here, stuff sticking out. You know, a good thing to look at is just type in this. for this kind of thing. But don't copy it slavishly. You just want to get, again, look what I did. I just got the rhythm of the shapes more or less, gave you a few recognizable things and just got the rhythm of what that looks like, right?
Yes.
Which is kind of the trick with everything, to be honest.
Yeah, and like I said, that's kind of what I was going for, but I just didn't know how to do
Yeah,
it.
it's something you got to learn how to do. Yeah. Which is everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, look up this kind of stuff. Right?
Yeah.
There's tons of it. I pull over, like they demoed a bunch of buildings over down the hill or down the mountain. I pulled over. I took tons of pictures of that stuff just because it's interesting. You know what I mean? Look at
Right.
this.
Mm-hmm.
There's some concrete version of it. Another thing you can look at is like, you know, this is good stuff here. You know, it's just a big mess. But rebar, look at all that rebar. You know, it's not really, you know, what it is specifically. I mean, it is in your case because you're going to throw a couple of things in there that speak to their culture, right?
Yeah.
So the things that I sprinkled in for visual cues, yours are going to be more, you know, things that speak to their culture. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm definitely keeping those. So.
Okay. Who else? Now, how you doing this? Is this in Photoshop?
Yeah, I'm just trying to build the layers, but
Yeah,
I was gonna ask you about the background. If you think I need to indicate like where the floor starts
I
and the
think
wall.
that this, again, this is now falling into, it's falling into, you know, is that the solution? Is it not the solution? Whatever. But like, okay, so one thing is I got, this is very dark back here, right?
Yeah, I don't know if that's the color I want to keep it either, but I just
I'm
started.
just talking about the value.
Yeah.
One thing I could do here is instead of just totally indicating the floor, I could probably come in here and I have to come forward a little bit, maybe, and go, I'm going to take a little of this because it might just be the, you know, implying it or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Which I think because you're going for this sort of murky idea, that might work.
Photoshop has done that to me before too, where I
Yeah,
tried
it doesn't always get the
color
color
people.
exactly right.
Yeah.
Okay. And then maybe I come here. And I wouldn't do it this geometric. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I also
Yeah,
wouldn't do it nearly that bright. It'd be way down here.
Mhm. I see what you're saying though.
Yeah, but I do it somehow. Now, here's the other thing. Let's try this just for the hell of it.
What tool was it that you
I
used?
use the perspective tool and then I'm using the iris blur.
All right.
And what the iris blur lets me do is like really control where, how far out the softness goes, how much of it, where it is targeted,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
See, that works pretty good,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the iris blur, by the way, is in Blur Gallery Iris Blur.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that will help.
Yeah, and then, you know, and then I get into what I do when I'm playing around digitally or whatever. I don't know if I can do it here. I just start screwing around with like, and I really ultimately like to have this be like, why is this here? Not just trying colors, but like, would there have been wallpaper on the wall? What colors would have been in this? God damn it. would have been in this room and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I might even go, you know what else I might do?
Hmm.
I might find like a old picture from around that time period of maybe wherever, somewhere that's a similar, or maybe even that place, and go, what kind of wallpaper they have on the wall? And then I can create something that looks sort of like that wallpaper and sort of layer blended over it. And then when I go in and start doing textures and murking it up, it's going to get old and, you know, dilapidated looking. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
And that might be part of my little texture ideas. I'm overlaying textures. I might
Mhm.
let that fade out at the bottom. And then as I build my textures over it, it's going to look all beat up and old,
Yeah.
you know.
Yep.
But I'm sure you can find, like, go look at Japanese restaurants from this time period. You might even be
Yeah.
able to find one from there. And, you know, they'll probably find some that look sort of like those inky drawings and things like that.
Mhm.
And if you get lucky and it looks like that, then, you know, you just create that and then you repeat it just like they did with theirs. And then you just make a pattern out of it and boom, you pop it on there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was also gonna ask you, I wanted to make the design in the wood look kind of carved into it. Do you have any
Carved into,
advice?
or is it raised, like carved? Okay.
Carved. I want to make it
Well,
like
what's
the
going to
line
happen
work,
there
it's
is that
indented.
it's going to be like if the light, wherever the light's coming from. Right now, we haven't
Yeah.
really determined that. But let's say the light's up here, then
Mhm.
you're going to have to get this, you know, it's going to pitch a little darker here and a little lighter on the top,
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
you know. But you know, again, you don't want to overdo it. Okay. This
Mhm.
isn't about rendering, it's a little more about
Yeah.
painting, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And I make sure you're doing everything on different layers and stuff. Like here too, like this, if that's on its own layer,
Yeah, it is.
I'd probably come in here maybe and go, it's a couple things I could do. Let's see if this works. And it had to be on its own layer. Yeah, it's not letting me do it, but I could go on that my own layer with the warp tool and I could warp that so it's not so like perfect.
Yeah.
I could also go in here and just go to this little smudge tool and kind of screw it up a little bit in here and be more controlled about it than I am. But then it's not so perfect, right? Don't do it like I did there. That's clearly not intentional. Does that make sense? Yeah?
Yeah. Thank you.
Now, that also assumes that, you know, you don't want it super graphic or whatever. That's your thing.
No, yeah, I think that'll help.
And then also, these are totally symmetrical.
Yeah, you're right.
So I might get rid of one or something like that.
Hmm.
And then, you know, when you put some old wallpaper in there, start distressing it, it's all going to start pulling together, right?
All right. Sounds
And I
good.
kind of like that the floor, and the reason I pulled this out, it feels a little like it's floating, so you have to get that right. The reason I pulled this little, it'd probably be more there or something. This light is going to cast out here, not right up to the lip.
Yeah, that makes sense. I still want to make it a little more green too. I just started out with that color.
Well, that's easy.
Yeah.
And that you just put another layer over this.
Mm-hmm.
Now just do it half-ass. Don't do it half-ass. You know, maybe I go to this and then I shift this a little greeny. And the thing that's nice about Photoshop, and it sounds like old fartish stuff I'm about to say right now, is that, you know, what I throw down initially doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to go boom. Then I might go, maybe I want a little, and then I'm going to probably go what over, like that's not too bad. But I want to get it, like that's a little dirtier, murkier.
Yeah.
And then I might get lucky and just land on something. But even if I don't get it exactly, which I'm not going to get it exact, that's also a little murky, right?
Yeah.
I don't know which one was the murky one. Let's go down here. Let's try that one. You know, and then I can come in here and go, I always go through the color spectrum. Like
Mhm.
that's pretty dirty and murky right there.
Yeah.
And then I might come in here with a really soft brush and lower my opacity. Oops. Really lower my opacity. Take some of it out. So I don't want it covering everything. Then I might come back in here because these are on layers probably, and I'd go, well, maybe I want those buildings just a little darker, you know?
Yeah.
And I know I'm changing the whole thing, but just do it on your own layer, right?
Mm-hmm. I
You
still want to
know.
get a lot of detail in on the buildings too.
When you get too much detail.
No, just a little.
Yeah, you don't want to over detail thing. I mean, in my opinion, you know, you
Yeah.
might want to do a little bit of, and I'd probably do this with a cool color, like a nice color.
Mm-hmm.
And get a little bit of some of the windows in there.
Yeah.
And then what I like to do is just go, you know, I'll go in here. I'm not going to make these all uniform,
Mm-hmm.
but you can see just knocking in a couple of windows kind of helps.
Yeah, it does.
Oh, and I got the opacity down. So let's pull the opacity back up. Then I might come back here and like put a little bit of like that kind of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I build this little murky idea, and I'm not doing this with a mind towards like, ooh, how exactly does everything work? No, I'm just having fun, really, to be honest.
Yeah.
You know, and then I might go, is there any place where I could get some warmth in here? That's too red. But maybe I could go. I don't know exactly what all these things are. It doesn't really matter as long as they make sense to me.
Yeah.
You know, and then I start just painting, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Now I don't want to put windows everywhere. They're all uniform. I don't want to do that. I
Yeah.
want to pop some here, pop some there. Decision making. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then once you get all that set up, then you get to come in and start really playing with the textures, and then you're painting back in some more, and then, you know,
Yeah.
on and on and on, right?
Yep.
It's cool, man.
Thank you.
Okay, you guys. Is everybody understanding now? I mean, it looks to me like everybody is. Yeah?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to keep checking in with you guys. And so on Wednesday, make sure wherever you're at, make sure you're constantly working. So when we jump in here that you have, you know, if you have something on deck you need help with, I can help you. Yeah?
All right.
All right, you guys. I'll see you on Wednesday.
See you Wednesday.